The honourable member from Thornhill.
Hey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So today we're here once again to discuss the economic vandalism of the Prime Minister and his Liberal-NDP partners and what they've inflicted upon Canadians. And nowhere is that vandalism clearer than the housing crisis today in this country. And all you have to do is look at a real estate listing or talk to someone with a mortgage to realize that after 9 years of this government, the dream of home ownership in this country is simply dead. Mr. Speaker, my parents came to this country looking for opportunity, and they found it. They worked hard, they made countless sacrifices, they saved up. They were eventually able to buy a home for about $150,000 in the place that I grew up in Thornhill. And that was on a taxi driver's salary. Today, a house in that same neighborhood is selling for, you can get a deal at $1.5 million, but close to $2 million. Wow. A more than tenfold increase. But I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker now, the taxi drivers, small business owners, and nearly everyone else who works for a living isn't earning a tenfold increase in salary to match that tenfold increase in housing prices. Because my parents had an affordable place to live in a safe neighborhood. They could raise a family. They could start a business. They could live the life that they dreamed of after fleeing one that we would never know. That dream is being cruelly taken away for too many in this country. Right. In Toronto, it used to take you 25 years to pay for a mortgage, and now it could take you more than 30 years to save up for a down payment. The average salary needed to afford the average home in the city is $263,300. And that's not a mansion, that's not for a palace, that's for an average home. A bungalow in a place like Scarborough. But who makes $163,000 a year? Exactly. Certainly not most people in Toronto, where the average salary is $60,000 a year. Certainly not a new immigrant to this country coming here looking for a fresh start to forge new horizons. Certainly not new graduates looking for a place to start their careers, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to start a family. Not even the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Housing. They have made this country so unaffordable that even their own MPs couldn't afford a home in the place where they came from, or in our nation's capital. And that's not a knock on them. It's a reality that their boss has inflicted on Canadians right across the country. And it's not just Toronto, Madam Speaker. It's Brampton, where home prices are up 139% in just 10 years. In Burlington, where they're up 101%. In rural places, too, like Prince Edward County, where prices are up 211%. In fact, 24 out of 28 areas in Ontario, as defined by the Canadian Real Estate Association, have seen price increases over 100% in the last 10 years alone. In that vein, Madam Speaker, I just want to let you know that I'm going to split this time. But I also wanted to tell you that it's not just Ontario. It's Prince Edward Island, where housing prices are up 137% right across the province. In British Columbia, up 90%. Even in Quebec, that used to have some of the country's most affordable homes, it's up 81%. Madam Speaker, actions have consequences, and this Liberal-NDP government is certainly finding that out now, as results of their economic vandalism become clearer and clearer. This is what happens when you pump $500 billion of inflationary spending into the Canadian economy, disproportionately benefiting those asset holders and not the ones who are looking for somewhere to call home. Right. It's what happens when you ship billions of dollars off to municipalities with no strings attached on how that money is used or what it goes to. They sent $471 million to Toronto. But since then, housing starts are down 40%. Wow. And development charges, get this, are up 42%. That's what happens when your immigration system is broken by a government that can't do the simple math. In 2022, just last year, we accepted 437,000 new citizens, 607,000 permanent residents, but we only built 219,000 new homes. So anybody who would do the basic math on this could have anticipated what happened next. But the Minister of Immigration didn't. In fact, he ignored the recommendations from his own department that warned against a housing shortage. This is the guy who's now the Minister of Housing, the man who helped break the immigration system, in addition to losing track of all of the people that he let in, is now responsible for fixing housing in this country. Wow. It's going exactly how you might expect. Housing prices continue to rise and housing starts continue to go down. We know that the Liberals try to distract Canadians with what's happening in other countries as a way to somehow minimize the valid concerns of the people in our own country. So let's talk about some of these foreign countries for just a moment. Housing in Vancouver, in Toronto, and Montreal was deemed much more unaffordable than cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York. Toronto and Vancouver were also deemed, quote, impossibly unaffordable when compared to Australia, China, Ireland, New Zealand, Singapore, the UK, and the US. So what do you do about all of this? Well, the Liberal answer is to continue to keep funneling money into an accelerator that has built exactly 0 homes and keep shoveling cash into the infrastructure bank, which has built exactly or completed exactly the same number of projects. They're doubling down on the same approach that got us here. And they're not willing or they're unable to make new housing available while at the same time continuing to mess with the immigration system, a mess that has this weak Prime Minister staring down the barrel at 25% tariffs or a tariff threat from the US. Mr. Speaker, common sense Conservatives have a different approach. We're going to cut the GST on new housing construction so it's cheaper, not more expensive, to build units that Canadians need. We're going to make life more affordable by increasing the supply and the availability for places to live from coast to coast. The current Liberal housing minister loves the photo ops. It's most of his job. Big, fancy photo ops, but no meaningful results because you can't argue with the facts. We're going to quit the photo ops and the posturing and replace them with actual negotiation that ties the number of infrastructure dollars that cities receive to the number of homes they build. We'll make sure that high-density housing gets built and near critical infrastructure like public transit. It's a common-sense approach, Madam Speaker, and what you incentivize, you get. The government incentivizes inaction and delay, and that's what they're actually getting. We'll incentivize actual results for Canadians so they can get that dream of home ownership or achieve that dream. Even Liberals approve of the plan. Liberals like the Prime Minister's advisor, Mike Moffat, who called it, quote, bold. He said he was a big fan of the idea. He knows that it's time for real action, as do most other Canadians. It seems like everyone except the ones who sit on the other side of the House know exactly what the solution is. Madam Speaker, we're going to axe the tax, we're going to build homes, we're going to finally bring home a country where hard work pays off once again, where affordable housing gives way to that Canadian dream. And there's much more I can talk about. I could go on about the lowest projected growth amongst advanced economies, the 1.5 million Canadians seeking work that can't find it, the rapid growth of our bureaucracy and the red tape here in Ottawa, the impending quadrupling of a carbon tax, which will delete more than $30 billion from our GDP, or the new capital gains tax, which will send all that money down south. I could go on and on and on. Unfortunately, I'm going to run out of time. But I would much rather have 4 years to come up with the solutions to address this, the problems created by the Liberals and the NDP, instead of the 10 minutes that this debate affords. All Canadians needed a carbon tax election yesterday. That's what we're hearing right across the country. So we can have a common-sense Conservative majority government led by the member from Carleton that will fix this mess, that will axe the tax, that will build homes, that will fix the budget, and that will stop crime. It is within our reach, and we're going to bring home homes that Canadians can actually afford. We're going to bring it home after the next election, after we have a Conservative majority government in this place, led by the member from Carleton.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for St. John Rothsay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member Opposite, for her speech. But, Madam Speaker, I do come from the riding of St. John Rothsay that's benefited greatly from programs that we've brought forward, like the Co-Investment Fund, the Rapid Housing Initiative, the Housing Accelerator Fund. And one thing certainly I noticed over the last few weeks was the Leader of the Opposition calling mayors across this country incompetent. And my question to the member opposite is, do you agree with that comment, calling mayors across this country incompetent? And will she also get behind the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is helping to transform communities, setting the table to build houses across this country? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Thornhill.
Thanks to my honourable colleague. First of all, he should remember that the accelerator builds exactly 0 homes, and that's an admission by their own housing minister. The second thing I would ask him is, what kind of city takes $470 million from the federal government only to see housing starts fall by 40%, rather and have development costs go up by 42%. We believe that the money belongs in the pockets of Canadians rather than in big bureaucracies, and that's exactly what we're going to do after Canadians elect a new government, after throwing out the most unpopular government in my lifetime.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Conservatives were abolishing taxes on new constructions. Well, of this tax asks Quebec and other provinces to do the same thing, eliminating taxes on new homes. I have a question. Does she not realize that it is not federal jurisdiction, it's provincial decisions to make? What does she have to say?
Madam Speaker, what we're talking about here is actually taking the tax off for individuals right across the country, off of homes under $1 million. Not only will that spur a tremendous amount of housing construction around the country, which this government has failed to do, which they have seen housing starts right across the country go down to municipalities where they've pumped millions and millions of dollars in. They've seen development costs go up. I think that's a responsibility of the federal government, one that this federal government has failed Canadians with over the last 10 years, and that is why we are in this crisis, and we are going to fix it.
Comments, the honourable member for London Fanshawe.
I want to thank the honourable member for her speech. I am a bit concerned, however, that in all of the slogans and the one-liners that we are missing quite a lot of details in terms of this Conservative plan. And I am concerned that when we talk about, and they're talking about the GST off of homes under $1 million, that in one breath, they're talking about that, and in another breath, when we've tried to reduce the GST off of some home essentials, they're calling it inflationary. I'm concerned that people would be confused in terms of that double standard or that hypocrisy, and I would love to hear the honourable member address that.
For Thornhill.
Nobody is confused about any of the hypocrisy here. What they are confused is the hypocrisy from the NDP that continues to vote with this Liberal government to raise taxes on all Canadians on everything. Our solution is pretty simple. We're going to take the tax off of everything for good for everyone. And I think the member of the NDP can go back to her people and have a carbon tax election where there's one option. She can continue supporting the government of the day like she has, being another part of the Liberal Party. She wasn't elected to do that. Or she can offer a permanent tax cut on everything for everyone.
Well said.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Concerned that the member wasn't going to get her stars because she wasn't using the slogans, but she caught it at the very end. You know, it's amazing. When we talk about housing, the gentleman that she's sitting beside, Madam Speaker, the leader of the Conservative Party, he was the worst Minister of Housing in the history, well, at least until World War II anyway. 6 homes. That's how many houses he built. Now the Conservatives say, we got an idea. We're going to dump all over affordable housing, that's for sure, Madam Speaker. My question is, how can the member say with a straight face that the Accelerator Fund is not doing anything to construct new homes? That's absolutely ridiculous, Madam Speaker. Does she not understand the principles of infrastructure?
Great question.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill, a very brief answer.
I'm glad that the member opposite is concerned about my career trajectory, but I'm not going to take lessons from him. What I will say is that for $89 billion, what this government has done, $89 billion of an accelerator fund on housing, this government has doubled the price of a home in 10 years. They've doubled the price of rent, and they've doubled the price of mortgage everywhere, right across the country. Awesome.